Introduced in 1964, the first-generation Ford Mustang remained in production for nearly a decade. But by the time it was discontinued in 1973, the pony car had morphed into something entirely different. It was 8 inches, 203 millimeters, longer, over 1,100 pounds, 499 kilograms, heavier, and devoid of true high-performance engines. Like all muscle cars of the golden era, the Mustang lost its high-compression V8 engines due to emission regulations. Available with up to 375 horsepower in 1971, the Mustang came with up to 275 horsepower in 1972. For the final year, the most potent version delivered 266 horsepower. This is one of the reasons why the 1973 version is the least valuable and desirable iteration of the first-gen Mustang. But that's not to say they're not cool classics. This 1973 Mach 1, for instance, packs a Cobra Jet mill. It's not the iconic 428 cubic inch, 7.0-liter version introduced in 1968 or the 429 variant of 1971, but it's the most powerful factory unit you can have in a final-year first-gen Mustang. The fastback you see here hails from Isanti, Minnesota, and just emerged from long-term storage. The car was parked in a garage for 28 years, and it's not exactly roadworthy, but it's not a rust bucket either. While it does show a few blisters and dings, it's mostly rust-free and should clean up nicely. Granted, the exterior would benefit from a restoration, but if you address the body issues affecting the lower half, it still has a few years of driving ahead. The interior is decent at first glance. There are cracks on the dashboard and the front seats, but that's something you'd expect in a vehicle that sat for nearly 3 decades. Unless the carpets hide rusty floor panels, this Mustang doesn't need all that much if you don't want a Concours winner. What about that Cobra Jet engine? Well, as I previously mentioned, it's not a true Cobra Jet, but Ford did use the name in 1973. But in the absence of a 429 V8 mill, it was slapped on the 351 cubic inch, 5.8-liter Cleveland. The unit was a carryover from 1972, and output remained unchanged at 266 horsepower and 301 pound-feet, 408 newton-meters of torque. With the Cleveland HO, 275 horsepower, discontinued, the 351 CJ was the most potent mill in 1973. The power plant soldiered on through 1974, but it wasn't offered the Mustang II. Ford only made it available in the Ranchero and Torino, while Mercury installed it in the Cougar and Montego. This Mustang still relies on its numbers-matching V8 and pairs it with a 4-speed manual gearbox. Once revived, it should be an entertaining drive. The Mustang comes with a clean title and is up for auction on Barn Finds. Bidding is at only $1,200, but the listing ends on August 26th, and it has a reserve. How much is this Mach 1 worth? The answer to that question depends on more than just dollars and cents. It requires an appreciation of where the Mustang stood in 1973, what the Mach 1 represented in the brand's heritage, and how enthusiasts today view the final year of the original pony car. To understand why this particular car, tucked away in Minnesota for almost 3 decades, is special, we have to rewind to the origins of the Mustang story. When Ford unveiled the Mustang in April 1964, it wasn't simply another model. It was a cultural phenomenon. The company created a whole new market segment, the pony car, characterized by long hoods, short rear decks, affordable pricing, and broad customization potential. Buyers could tailor their Mustangs to be anything from economical commuters with 6-cylinder engines to sporty machines with V8 power. The car's immediate success, selling over 400,000 units in its first year, reshaped Detroit's priorities. Chevrolet scrambled to answer with the Camaro, Dodge would develop the Challenger, Plymouth offered the Barracuda, and AMC tried with the Javelin. The first Mustangs were light, nimble, and fun. By the late 1960s, however, America's appetite for horsepower and aggressive styling pushed the car into a new direction. The introduction of the big block 390, followed by the legendary 428 Cobra Jet, turned the Mustang into a legitimate muscle car contender. Models like the Boss 302 and Boss 429 proved Ford could build street cars with direct racing pedigrees. But those glory years were short-lived. By the early 1970s, the automotive landscape was shifting dramatically. Insurance premiums for high-performance models were skyrocketing. The federal government was tightening safety and emission standards. Rising fuel prices loomed on the horizon, and the once unshakable love affair with massive cubic inches was beginning to waver. Car companies tried to balance these pressures while still delivering performance and style. For Ford, the answer was to stretch the Mustang into a larger, more luxurious car that could still be had with respectable power. That's how the 1971 to 1973 Mustangs came to be. These were the largest first-generation Mustangs ever built, with longer wheelbases and broader dimensions. Some enthusiasts argue they lost the delicate balance and youthful energy of the 1964 1970 cars. Others see them as bold, imposing, and distinct in their own right. Either way, the Mach 1 variant stood at the top of the range for buyers who still craved muscle. The Mach 1 had first appeared in 1969, intended as a more affordable, street-oriented performance package compared to the homologation-focused Boss models. With sporty graphics, shaker hoods, high-back bucket seats, and a range of potent V8 options, it quickly became a bestseller. By 1973, the Mach 1 still carried much of that visual drama, though its mechanical options had narrowed due to changing times. The once mighty Cobra Jet name was now attached to the 351 Cleveland, which, while respectable, didn't deliver the same aura as the fire-breathing 428s and 429s of just a couple of years before. Still, the 351 CJ deserves more credit than it often receives. With nearly 270 horsepower on tap, it was competitive for its era, especially considering most engines were detuned to meet federal emissions requirements and to run on lower-octane unleaded fuels. The Cleveland design featured large ports and valves, making it a high-breathing engine with solid mid-range power. Backed by a 4-speed manual transmission, as in the Minnesota example, the car offered a satisfying mix of torque and driver engagement. Then there's the question of survival. Many of these 1971 to 1973 Mustangs were driven hard, neglected, or modified beyond recognition. Finding one that still retains its numbers-matching engine and hasn't succumbed to severe rust is becoming increasingly rare. That's why the discovery of a long-stored example, largely complete and restorable, sparks interest among collectors even if it isn't the most coveted model year. Imagine the story of this particular Mach 1. For nearly 30 years it sat dormant, covered in dust, its tires slowly flattening against the concrete floor of a Minnesota garage. Perhaps its owner parked it with the intention of someday returning it to the road, only for life to intervene. Decades passed, styles changed, entire generations grew up, and yet this Mustang waited patiently. Now, with fresh eyes and renewed enthusiasm for classic American iron, someone has the chance to bring it back to life. The restoration path could go in many directions. A purist might choose to return it to factory specification, preserving its originality and honoring its place as the last of the first generation. Another enthusiast might see it as the perfect platform for a restomod, adding modern suspension, brakes, and even a fuel-injected V8 while retaining the car's bold 70s style. Either way, the car has potential to be more than just a static collectible. It can be driven, enjoyed, and shared. From a market perspective, values for 1971 to 1973 Mustangs have historically lagged behind their earlier siblings. The 1965 to 1970 cars, especially fastbacks and performance variants, command higher prices because of their stronger connection to the birth of the pony car era and the height of the muscle car wars. Yet, the later models have been gaining appreciation. Enthusiasts who grew up in the 70s remember them fondly, and younger collectors are increasingly priced out of the earlier cars. As a result, clean Mach 1s from 1971 to 1973 are slowly climbing in value, especially those with desirable options like a 4-speed manual and performance engines. So, what is this car worth? With bidding starting at $1,200, it's clear the market still undervalues these machines. A fully restored example can fetch considerably more, especially if documented and kept close to original spec. But beyond market trends, there's an intangible worth in owning a car like this. It's a rolling piece of history, a tangible connection to an era when style, sound, and the thrill of the open road mattered more than fuel economy or electronic aids. Driving a 1973 Mustang Mach 1 is an experience that modern cars simply can't replicate. The heavy clutch, the long throw of the shifter, the burble of the V8 at idle, and the way the car squats under acceleration all contribute to a visceral sense of connection. It demands engagement and rewards commitment. Every drive feels like an event, not just a commute. That's why enthusiasts continue to seek them out, even when logic and practicality might argue otherwise. Ultimately, this Mustang represents more than its horsepower rating or its resale value. It's a survivor from a transitional moment in automotive history, when muscle cars were fighting to stay relevant against mounting challenges. It's a testament to the enduring appeal of the Mustang nameplate, which has adapted and evolved over 6 decades, yet still carries the DNA of the original 1964 one-half car. And it's an opportunity for someone today to step into that story, to become the next caretaker of a machine that was built to stir emotions and ignite imaginations. As the auction clock ticks down, the fate of this Mach 1 hangs in the balance. Will it be snapped up by a restorer eager to bring it back to glory? Will it become the foundation of a wild custom project? Or will it simply be cherished as a driver? A slightly weathered but still proud example of Ford's pony car heritage? Whatever happens, one thing is certain. Cars like this remind us why classics matter. They connect us to the past, inspire us in the present, and keep the flame of automotive passion alive for the future. When placed in the context of its rivals, the 1973 Mustang Mach 1 becomes even more fascinating. Chevrolet's Camaro, Dodge's Challenger, and Pontiac's Firebird were all experiencing the same challenges: shrinking horsepower, heavier bodies, and stricter emissions controls. None of them escaped the realities of the early 1970s, and in many ways, Ford's approach with the Mach 1 was simply a reflection of the entire muscle car industry adapting to survive. Buyers who loved raw power were disappointed, but those who appreciated style, comfort, and a blend of performance still found plenty to enjoy. Looking back today, that balance is what makes the '73 Mustang so intriguing. It embodies the end of one era and the beginning of another, bridging the gap between the fire-breathing legends of the late '60s and the more restrained cars that followed. For collectors, that duality is exactly what makes it worth saving.